Right. I'm ready.
Awesome.
Oh my goodness, I'm so nervous. Right, let's start this. I'll do my sweaty hands. And then cut all this bit out.
No, it's great. I love it because you're a human being and you're just like all the rest of us. And that's the whole purpose of today.
Um, Hello, you. I am back with another podcast episode. And as you know, The Independent Spouse is all about me talking to my military friends, people doing amazing projects in the community, whether it's a charity or a business. And I interview them, find the inspirational parts of military life to share with the world because we're so often in the shadows as military spouses and partners. And that's why the independent spouse exists, to showcase the brilliantness. And like I said, I always interview somebody on my podcast, but today, oh, we're doing something a little bit different. And suddenly I've become very nervous about it. I'm joined by the wonderful Emma Gray, who I'm sure you know, have seen on the socials, have met in Milspo. And today she's going to interview me. So I guess this is the point where I hand over to Emma, who is gonna hold my hand through this interview, look after me, and quiz me about who I am and what I do. So, Emma, welcome again back to the podcast. I'm just gonna hand over to you.
Let's roll. This is so exciting. I can't tell you what an honor and a privilege it is to be the person asked to do this. I feel like you're like on a pedestal in the Milspo world, and I get to show the world that actually you're a normal human being at the end of the day. So this is so cool. So yeah, I'm going to say hi. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining the Independent Spouse, Jess. Thanks for being here today. And could you tell our lovely listeners, I'm sure they've heard your voice endlessly and gained so much for everything that you do for Milspo, but do they actually know much about you? So can we start off with you just introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about Jess?
Of course. So this is so bizarre. But hello, I am Jess. Jess Sands. I'm the founder of Milspo, the host of the Independent Spouse podcast, but not today. I am a mum, an RAF wife, and I have my own design business, Design Jessica, that I started after a very long career of being a graphic designer. And then I annoyingly but wonderfully fell in love with someone in the Air Force. And so I went freelance and started my own business. And that was the start of my business journey. And that is why Milspo exists today.
That's so cool. And just, I can't believe how lovely it is to be here and to be asking you these questions, because I think so often we see people and we make presumptions about them and all the rest of it. And people see you as Milspo, but actually your design business is actually take a step back, is actually where it all started. So can you tell us a little bit about why you started your design business?
Yes. So I went freelance in 2012. It was a good year. That was a good year, wasn't it? Olympics. I had met my boyfriend on a night out in Bath. So I lived in Bath for 10 years, went to university there, did a design degree there, had a career there, had the most amazing life. And then one night, I stumbled, because we may have drank a lot, into this relationship with this boy who was in the Air Force. He was based at RAF Lynham, and we met and fell in love, and then he disappeared to the Falklands, and that was rubbish, but we got over it. And then we lived together in Bath, and he was away all the time. It was those years, Afghanistan, those years where they were away every summer. So he'd go away for 6 weeks, for 10 weeks, for 3 months, all of the time over those years. And we lived together technically, but he was never around. And then they closed RAF Lynham, which meant that he moved to RAF Braze Norton, which was great because I was still living in Bath. He did the daily commutes from Bath to Braze Norton, which during the summer, I'm sure is a lovely drive. But the winter came and the M4 was closed, and it was just too difficult for him to do the commute. So we decided as a couple, in theory, that we would move closer to his new base, RAF Braze Norton. So I left my job and went freelance, because graphic designers go freelance, quite a normal thing to do. So off we went. We moved to Whitney, because that was back in the day where you couldn't get a Mary Quarter if you weren't married. Clues in the name, I guess. So we had a rental in Whitney, and he continued to be away all of the time. And I joined a few wives' coffee mornings, which was particularly painful. They were lovely and welcoming, but it wasn't the beautiful life that I had back in Bath with the networking and the business and everything. and I got particularly lonely. But I realized very quickly that my business was the thing I really loved. So I was a graphic designer, I had my own design business. I had loads of clients from my old company, and I realized that that was my thing. That was what I was going to do. I was going to build my business. But inevitably, as time went on, my clients forgot me. So I got less clients. I started doing networking, found a few more clients, but it was really tough. And we ended up getting posted. So after 2 years at Bryce, well, in Whitney, we got posted to Northwood, another punchy job where he was away all of the time. We were married by this point. So we'd moved into quarters. Um, and I was like, I've got this most amazing business, but it's really hard to get clients. And that networking group that I had in Whitney was so cool, but they've also forgotten me. This business military life thing is really tough. I don't know how it's going to work, but other people must be doing it. We must have other things happening rather than coffee mornings and flower arranging, which is brilliant if you love that stuff. But I really like my business. So I was like, okay, I'm going to just do this little podcast and I'm going to interview people that are in the military community that are doing epic things because I know they're out there. I just need to find them. So my first podcast episode was with the lovely Heleth from Recruit for Spouses, and then it was Louise from Little Troopers, and I did Herapreneurs with Peter Mountford. So it was a very wobbly. If you go back and listen to those first episodes, they're pretty shocking. I'm not going to lie. It was very wobbly, but it was just nice to talk to other people doing epic things in the military community to share it. And this was 2018, so podcasts were quite a new thing. Not many people doing it, but it was just a nice way to share military life and meet people and get some new business design clients, really. If I'm thinking about it selfishly, it was a great way to share what I was doing and just meet a bigger network of people. So that's how that all started.
Amazing. And it's really fascinating because actually it leads me lovely onto Milspo because like so many of us know Milspo as what it is now. And there's so much of what it does with the networking, the inner circle, with all the awesome content and training and all the rest of it. And then the podcast. And I'm not sure people realize that. So the podcast came first. Is that right? How did Milspo actually start?
So it was only ever going to be a podcast. I like listening to podcasts. I thought they were cool. I realized that not many people were hearing from the military community because this was so Afghanistan was still going and it was all about serving people, which is great. But there was nothing about those, at home in the shadows, as I like to say. And I thought it was really cool. So yeah, Milspo started as a podcast called The Independent Spouse, still called The Independent Spouse. And it was just brilliant. The first few episodes, just even though they're horrendous, got loads of engagement and following, and people were like, Jess, these people are cool. I want to meet them. I want to talk with them. I hate the fact that I'm based in Scotland or Cyprus or somewhere, and I don't get to spend time with these people. So then I was like, I'll just do a little Facebook group. And it actually started off. So our second posting was Northwood HQ, and I did like a little networking group. I was like, right, I've got a choir. That's a great concept. Let's do a networking group that we can take everywhere, or maybe we could have one in each base. So started off, I did a very brave post. I called it Millipreneurs, which I mean, it's not much of a stretch, but it's called Millipreneurs, and it was only for women. It was wives. It was military wives because it was 2018, and I didn't know any better. And there were four of us, and we met every month in the community centre by the church. And we met and we got together and we networked. And then every so often somebody would leave. So there was three of us. And then at a point, it got to a point where it was just me sat in the community centre all by myself going, oh no, this has failed. Let's take it online. All these people all over the place are saying, I love your podcast. I want to meet these people. So a little Facebook group started. And it was just me posting far too much on this little Facebook group back in. I think this is still 2018. Just trying to get some friends, really. It's a really selfish thing. I was like, let's do a Facebook group. And it kind of snowballed from there. And then we went into, I think we moved to twice more after that and started doing virtual networking before that was a thing. So I can only remember houses that I've lived in because we've moved so many times. But virtual networking we were in High Wycombe. So we moved from Northwood to High Wycombe. We've moved a lot. So it's quite fiddly. I should write it all down into like a timeline so I can remember other stuff. And virtual networking really wasn't a thing, but I knew that military partners were really hot on tech because we have to keep in contact with our serving person when they're abroad. Um, so Skype, I think I was using Skype. You remember Skype to do virtual networking? And I remember I'd seen somebody was doing it in America, but I didn't really understand it. So one day when my husband wasn't away, we got every single phone and computer and iPad and laptop in the house to try and work out if virtual networking would work with the
That's
software I was using. I know, it was so bizarre. And what we didn't realize is that the feedback, you get the most horrendous feedback when you put two bits of text together. I still think I may have tinnitus from the feedback. But yeah, I remember it really well. And we spent that evening trying to work out if this concept would work. And I did this little tiny video on YouTube going, come and join virtual networking. And I was so worried about it. And I keep that video to look back on to show how far I've come, because I need to share it. I need to share it more often. But it is a very polite YouTube video of me being very kind of wooden and frightened. And then it worked. The technology kind of worked. And I put it on the group. And that night we had, I think there was like 12 people came to the very first virtual networking. There were the best part that I remember was it was really lovely to meet everybody. But the best part was there was a lady living in Germany and somebody who was about to be posted there to the same base, and she was really nervous about it. And they got online and connected with each other and became friends. And it wasn't about the business, it was about the fact that this poor woman was being posted to Germany, didn't know where she was going, didn't know anything, but somebody that was already there could help her. And I realized that this was really cool and really lovely. And if I'd have had that in my many postings before that, it would have been really cool. So then it evolved a bit and it moved on to Zoom. God bless Zoom, which was still a bit glitchy at the time because this was pre-pandemic. But it was lockdown and the pandemic that changed the independent spouse into Milspo, because the language around the word spouse really wasn't fitting. Because as you know, there's girlfriends and boyfriends and widows and widowers. And military life was so restricted at that point for things that were just for wives or wives clubs or ladies' nights that actually I realized it needs to include everybody, which is why Milspo was the name I picked. It was rebranded. Milspo is a term the Americans use loads. They're all over it. They're really good because the Americans are ahead of the game with all these things. But for them, it's military spouse. And I use the SPO as spouses, partners, and other halves, because obviously I'm a graphic designer, so I'm good at branding. And I thought that's a really good way of being inclusive. And from what I could tell, nobody else had used that. So that was really handy. So that's what Milspo became, rebranded. Like, I think it was just before the first lockdown. And then before we knew it, we were in this online world where everybody was on Zoom, everybody was using it. Because Zoom had so much money being pumped into it, they updated all the software. It got really snazzy. And before I knew it, we were running Milspo meetups every week that used to go on for like 4 hours. And it was so wonderful because we were so worried about lockdown. We had in fact, I did a Milspo meetup 2 weeks before the UK lockdown. And there was lovely Kat who was posted in Italy. And obviously Italy got hammered first. And she just wanted somebody to talk to from home. She missed talking to people from home and she wanted to know what it was like here. But what she gave us was an insight to what the future might hold. So, at this point, I think I think it was, yeah, they had like morgues set up in the street and ambulances, and they were doing distancing and the shops were closed, and she was saying how difficult it was to get food. So it worked both ways. It was about her connection to home, but also us knowing what the future would hold with lockdown. So yeah, and who knew that was going to last so long? So every week for about, I think it's about a year, we did a Milspo meetup every Wednesday just to get online and make sure we were all okay. And that's how Milspo grew because people started getting online, and that's how it's so big now. So it was completely accidental. It was a little podcast that I thought was a good idea. Um, I'm very much not the right person or the best person to be doing this, but sometimes you just got to do the stuff and go with the flow and take the opportunities that come with it.
Yeah. And do you know, the one thing that I discovered you in lockdown, and it's fascinating because your Milspo term actually makes me feel included, whereas a lot of military stuff doesn't, because obviously I'm a widow now, so I'm not technically married, but the other halves part makes me feel like I validly belong. And I remember just being so grateful that you all included me. And I think for the military, for bereaved, and it is a kind of grief when your guys go away to a different country, because you're missing them being with you in you know, even though they're alive, very much so, doing amazing things abroad, you haven't got them with you, you haven't got them helping you, you haven't got them as the rock. And you might be able to, oh God, in my day it was an e-bluey, but you know, electronically now, contact them, and I'm showing my age, and all the rest of it. But I think one of the things that Milspo's done is hopefully has helped people with the loneliness. I don't know, what do you think is the main, I mean, obviously it helps with businesses, it's got all this amazing training and all the rest of it, but what do you think the biggest gift in Milspo is? Sorry, this one wasn't in the crib sheets, but the biggest gift of Milspo to everybody else that you would love to gift people through Milspo.
So the reason that I do it, and the reason it's a selfish thing. It's not because I want a huge business. It's not because I want to be the next Richard Branson, because quite frankly, I would have picked something slightly more lucrative to do if that was the plan. But back in our very first posting, after I left Beautiful Birth, where I'd been for 10 years and left my entire, like everything, I know that sounds really dramatic, but that was my home, and my career was so important to me, and my lovely friends on my hockey team, which is so, they were like a family. And we moved to Whitney, and then he went away. It was the most horrendous time of my life. And I know I had no reason. There's nothing horrendous had happened to me. I was just painfully lonely. I remember he constantly was going away, but I think he went away for like 7 weeks. And I had this revelation that the only person I'd spoken to was the woman in Sainsbury's. I went to Sainsbury's once a week. And that entire week, the only human that I spoke to was somebody in Sainsbury's. Now, I know that's on me a little bit. I could have done many, many things, but I was so down and it was so dark and I was so lonely. And we weren't in the gang because we weren't married, even though there is never a gang, but you just think there's a gang of everybody having a great time, but it never is that reality. And I think I spent 7 weeks just miserable. And it was so dark and it did so much damage to my brain that I'm still building myself back up again. And I don't think anybody should ever feel like that because of military life. I don't think that it should ever be that lonely and isolating because your husband, boyfriend, wife, whoever it is in a war zone. I think that it was really bad. It did loads of damage, and I don't think that's cool. And yes, there's many things I should have done and many things I could have done, but I just couldn't be asked because I
And
was so
I
sad.
think also, I think loneliness is a really fascinating emotion, isn't it? Because it's massive, and I don't think we talk about it enough. I don't think, you know, in today's day and age with social media, it's always the glossy and it's the amazing and it's the, you know, yes, I've married this amazing soldier, or he's my boyfriend or my girlfriend or what have you. But actually there's aspects of it that are shit, that are worrying, that are terrible, that are lonely, that are isolating. And I think that what you've done with Milspo is you've created a wonderful niche of people who want that connection, but also want something that's theirs. You know, our little businesses, they're things that we've put our blood, sweat and guts into, and actually to be able to have other people who understand that you're juggling that alongside the military spouse, partner, other half stuff, and possibly family and other dynamics, and moving house every 18 months to 2 years and all the rest of it. And it's massive. And I think there's only a small niche that get it. Especially with the business bit lumped in, because some people either they have employment, which means that they can go to work and come home again, and you never totally take the work hat off, but I think when you own your own business, you never take the work hat off. You know, everything, you're living and breathing it all the time, and then juggling everything else is just massive. So as well as being this amazing community for us all, that we all are literally, I will be forever grateful that I found you in lockdown. Yeah, lockdown was just, for me, my grief just, I was only a couple of years after Simon had died, and my grief just bubbled to the surface that, yeah, I had this amazing, and I also realized I'd lost the military connection. So having you guys was just like gold dust, and like literally really helped me sort of thrive as well as survive in lockdown, but as well as busting the loneliness thing and being a community. So what does Milspo do now? What does Milspo give to everybody?
I mean, fundamentally, it's just a gang of great people who get together and talk about lovely things. Sometimes that's business. I'm always trying to weave a bit of business into it because that's what is we all have in common, the military thing and the fact we all have our own businesses. So that comes hand in hand with a lot of support, a lot of tips on how to build your business. I run the odd webinar. There's a paid membership, which is more of an incubator for those who want to build their business through. We've got a 5-point stage system where you go from startup to, the most amazing business owner. So it's all around business and it's all around inspiration and support and just having something that's yours that's really important because like you said, it's a community that gets it. We don't, it's like you say, oh, my partner's away or he's deployed or they're deployed. And it's like, we get that. We don't need to spend 4 hours asking you where they are. But when you get to traditional networking, it's the only thing we can talk about. Honestly, the amount of the amount of normal, I say normal loosely, real life networking events that I've talked about aircraft drives me mad. But Milspo is different because we get it. We're not that interested. They've got their medals, they've got their support groups, they're fine. It's the thing that keeps us that we have in common, but we don't really talk about military life. It's not about that. It's about our stuff. And I think it's really important as a military partner to have your own business, to have something for you. It could be employment, like you said, that that you can showcase as your own. So rather than being the usual tags of the wife, the dependent, the military spouse, the mum, the dad, whoever you are, you've just got something that's yours that you can control that the military doesn't take over. So that is the thread of it. But then I create a lot of support like the podcast and the membership and the meetups, the real life meetup we've got in October, Amazon, love Amazon. It's so exciting. That's just the stuff, but actually it's the community that's the really cool bit that everybody loves, that I love because I am still lonely. But it's nice to just have a bunch of people that
And the
get it.
book.
I did. I wrote an entire book. How could I forget that?
Say a little bit about the book.
It's because I had a whole baby, and it's funny how your brain your brain does fall out a little bit. Yeah, I wrote a book on my maternity leave because clearly I'm bonkers. It's like, ask the busy person in the room to do stuff. But I have it. If you need a job doing, ask a military spouse. Yes, I wrote a book. It's a year old this June.
Oh,
I know it's just gone past the launch, and it's apparently the strapline says the ultimate guide to running a business. It's called Building Business Beyond the Magnolia Box because we just need to get out of the magnolia, basically. And it's like a guide on how I've done it, how you can do it too. And it's pretty snazzy. I'm quite proud of it.
oh, and rightly so. Do you know, I love the book because obviously my business is set up, but you talk people through all of it. So through literally from the very beginning, if someone's got a seed of an idea and they don't know what to do and they want to keep it shush shush, then I would so recommend that book because not only does it talk you through what you need to be thinking about, and it talks you the whole way through. So it's worthwhile for people like me who've got an existing business to read and all the rest of it. But unlike other books, it links it to having that spouse in the or other half or military connection in your world. But it also, I can remember starting it on a beach in Cornwall, and it feels like you're talking to us. So it literally is such a lovely read. It's like enjoyable to read because I could literally hear your voice as I was reading. It was just amazing. I was like, oh my God, since when was Jess on the beach with me? But it's such a lovely, easy read. It's so nice, but actually full of super practical, really important hints and tips. So yeah, no, I love the book. I think the book is brilliant. It's very, very cool.
Yeah, it's not my story, but it's things that I've learned and picked up along the way, and some huge mistakes I've made that I've been very brave and just put that in there and not thought about it since. But I'm just really aware that the business world is very shiny and lovely, and everybody's, Stephen Bartlett doing amazing things, or Richard Branson just, buying an island. Um, And military life is so the serving person or veterans. And there's nothing where military partners and business combine, really, and show the reality of it. And I'm kind of hoping that that's what the book does. It shows that it's bloody hard work, but it's also brilliant. And here's some terrible mistakes that I've made. Please don't do that. But also, you might want to try doing it this way. So it is like a guide. It's like a step process. Yeah, and I'm really chuffed with it because I think it's so. I just think it's really important that we have our own business because it saved me from those dark times, and hopefully it'll just make life a little bit brighter, a little bit less magnolia. Yeah, that's the point of it.
I just love it, and I love that you're so real. And on that really real theme, I'd love to ask you another question, which is not on the little crib sheet that you gave me, that we drugged up together. But is like, for me, you are a lovely example of someone who has this amazingly successful, lovely, gorgeous other half who's serving in the military, have a little one, which anyone will know who's been there, that just being a military other half is a bit different and a bit difficult. Anyone who's got a tiny toddler will know that that makes life a little bit of a struggle and a little bit difficult. Anyone who started their own business will know that suddenly you have to be an expert on everything, on marketing, on sales, on accounts. So, you can't just do the thing you love, the design stuff. You have to be an expert on all of it. And so that's really tough. And then I presume you probably have a lot to do with all the house moves. So there's all the logistics with all of that. And then there's Milspo. So the question I'd love to ask is, how the hell do you juggle it all? And how the hell do you stay sane whilst you're juggling all of that?
I don't, and I haven't. It's probably the best answer. I don't know. I always reference my poor dad when somebody asks me this because my poor dad he knows me. He doesn't say much, but when he does, it's quite profound. And I'm just really bloody minded, is what my dad would say. Um, I'm a problem solver and I am really passionate about Milspo, but it is by no means shiny. And I am failing in what feels like all areas of my life constantly. But I have felt that I've been messing around for years. Basically, that's what it is. I had those years in our first posting when I lost myself. It sounds very American, very dramatic. But I went from this sort of amazing graphic designer who I used to fly to Germany for meetings and talk to Disney because I used to design for Disney and I'd have meetings with high level people at Disney and life was really good. And then very quickly and very dramatically, it went really bad. And I spent so much time missing the old Jess and trying to get back to the old Jess that I feel like I wasted a lot of time. It wasn't wasted, but it feels like it was wasted. And now I am hitting 40 next month. We won't tell anybody. It's fine. I'm embracing it. And none of this really, it's not that it doesn't matter, but this, people have done this before, other people do this. We all have the same amount of time. And yeah, the juggle is real, but impossible. I don't juggle everything. I don't do anything. In fact, I fail at most things. But I'm really good at going, you know what, let's just be brave and jump in and do some stuff and not so much apologize later, but work it out later. Um, yeah, mum life is absolute chaos. My husband is wonderful, but I'm in a lot of credit from the years that he spent deployed. So, but he has an amazing career that's very high achieving, but we're just a really good team. We've realized that for him to do well, I have to be happy. And for me to do well, he has to be happy. So we are knackered and busy and outsource a lot of stuff. And sometimes the dog doesn't get walked and the house is a disaster. But when you're really passionate about something, it's amazing how you do it and how you get it done. And sometimes, in fact, most of the time, it's far from perfect, but done is always better than perfect. And as long as my little boy is happy, if there's some sort of dinner on the table or another table or a delivery person brings the dinner, which happens quite often, it doesn't matter. And I think that's my husband. I think he's got his head screwed on properly, and because we had all those terrible years of Afghanistan and Iraq, and he did a few really frightening humanitarian things, and we've been through some, well, I was in this country, but he's been through some tough times. And you know what? In comparison to war, this is easy. This is just putting some stuff on the internet and hoping for the best. Um, and planning really well. But yeah, it's not perfect. In fact, it's a disaster most days, but it's good fun and we have a good giggle. So
But do you know what comes through to me massively while you're talking is just that progress, not perfection. Like you
yeah.
progress, you progressing as a family, progressing with the kids, well, kid, unless there's something I don't know.
No, no, you've not outed me, not yet, no.
And you know, progressing with Milspo, it's constantly evolving, progressing with your business. And I think sometimes if we strive for perfection, we get stuck. Whereas just acknowledging that actually imperfect is perfect. The dishes can wait till the morning because sleep is far more important. You know, just working as a team. And if you do chicken nuggets and chicken dippers for him as well as the kid, then that's fine because at least it's food. You can put some baked beans on there, and that's kind of vegetables, isn't it? Um, and I think it's that balance between surviving and thriving. And some days you can thrive, and some days just surviving is success, isn't it? But I think one of the reasons we all love you so much is the realness, is the honesty that it isn't easy and it is a juggle. And I guess it's doing whatever shouts loudest first, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah, it's basically panic currently. But no, there is some structure to it, but I do get excited with shiny things. I need to control that. But I love an opportunity. I'm one of those people that tries to fix every problem, which is terrible for my overwhelm. But yeah, I think if you see something that needs fixing, I like to help because I think we just need to leave the world in a slightly better place. But equally, on the other hand, that means that when things don't go that way, it's really hard. So I have terrible problems with imposter syndrome and social media comparison. I because I live in a little bit of a bubble and because I'm, constantly head down doing work, my outside world experience it's all through social media, which is really bad because everybody is living their best life. And when you're sat in the magnolia, with your husband who's away again and your child is screaming again, it makes it really fiddly. So I am by far an optimist. I have to do loads of work on my negativity because I get hit so badly by the volume of Facebook likes or who's looked at my reel or if anybody says something slightly negative. I've been like that for years and it's something that really gets me. But I'm really working on that because it's not going to help anybody if I just worry about what other people think, quite frankly.
And it's so hard, isn't it? And I do, you know, this whole social media thing is so hard because of what Milspo is, a lot of it's online. So like you say, a lot of what you do lives online, and it's that reminder that when you go online, you're comparing other people's 5-minute highlights to your whole life. You know, very rarely do people, well, actually, I did this morning on my story show a picture of the dishes, but very rarely do people show the dirty dishes. They were clean dishes in my picture this morning, but because I came downstairs to a dirty kitchen, which I hate, little part of me hates, but I was so tired last night I couldn't do the dishes and I just went to bed. And then I was in a bad mood this morning and didn't want to do dishes. And I was like, you know what, do dishes first and then sit in the garden and chill. But very rarely do people share when life is hard and when it gets tough. So what do you do when you want to give up? Because I know that you struggled, especially with doing Milspo and your design business and being a mum and a wife and all the rest of it.
Um, I cry and sometimes throw things, quite often, and then I get over it. I take a couple of days out. What do I do when I just want to give up? I it takes a while. I'm really hard at coming back from that point because it's a strange world, business and military life, and then combining the two and becoming a bit of a head above the parapet stakeholder. So I end up being in a lot of MOD meetings and go to a lot of conferences and events, which are really snazzy, but also it's really hard when you feel like you're being viewed as a little wife. So I go to a lot of conferences and end up talking about my husband and his job. And I've now got made it into a fun game where I count how many times somebody asks what rank my husband is. 4 last time, yes. I don't know why they don't want to name my name first before they ask what my rank my husband is. But anyway, we'll get over that. You just have to go back to your why. So my why is really important to me. So my why is the reason I'm doing my business. And for me, it's not making money. unfortunately, I wish it were. And it's not becoming an influencer or being that person. If anything, I'd prefer to hide. But I have the most impressive husband, in my view, obviously, because I love him, so you have to say that. But I have a really impressive husband who's doing amazing things in the military and has a load of medals and stripes and stuff to prove that. But I want my little boy to see that mummies can do it too. That's why I'm doing it. I want my little boy to be really, really, not really impressed, but go, yeah, mum's cool. You know, dad's got all these letters after his name, but mum's really cool too. And that's my personal why. That's why I keep going. And also I do it for my mum, who didn't get opportunities to do the things that I get to do, and for my granny, who was a wartime wife, who didn't get the same opportunities. I feel like I owe future generations and previous generations just to be my best and to show them that it's really cool. So that is firmly wedged into my head to remind myself every so often. And then the other side of it is looking back at the miserable Jess in that first posting that was lonely and drinking far too much and only talking to them in Sainsbury's, and knowing that I can't ever go back to that, but equally there are other people who could potentially feel like that. So I just cry a bit, throw some stuff, get really stroppy, get over it, and remember why I'm doing this. And I
And when
can't
you
give up.
think of your why, Jess, this is the kind of coach in me, kind of ooh, having fun in the back of my head. But when you think of your why, because I think thinking of our why is really, really important. And when I run courses and stuff like that, I often get people to think about their why at the beginning, because when the going gets tough, it's the why that will get you through the mud. It's the why that will keep you going. And what's the feeling when you think of the why? When you think of helping those people who are drinking too much and only talking to the lady in Sainsbury's, but suddenly they've got a Milspo community. When you think of your little boy growing up going, hey, cool, mums can do the same as dads. When you think of the people who didn't get the opportunity to do this and you are trailblazing to be able to do it, what's the feeling that you feel that keeps you going?
Oh, so frightened. But knowing that, yeah, petrified. You know, when you're about to jump off a top board, and you're like, yeah, I feel like that all of the time because I keep doing these brave things and pushing myself, which I mean, it's not healthy, but it's good fun. But I just feel that you just got to push past that feeling because I've done it before and it was really cool and I've got some amazing memories. I
And
have
so
this,
push past the feeling when you're on the top board and you're absolutely shit scared and
yeah.
you're terrified, and then you do it and you don't just do the most amazing dive and land beautifully and get a 10 out of 10 and all the rest of it. How do you feel once you've done it?
Um, that that was tough, but you did that and you've survived that because you've it's that typical phrase, you've survived all the worst days of your life, so you can survive one more. And you shouldn't really push yourself through the worst days. But you've just got to do the stuff. That's the thing. I don't want to be that old granny. I mean, I'd love to be an old granny actually, because my poor mum didn't get to be an old granny, and I'm really chuffed that, I get the opportunity to do that. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. I want to be that old granny with all my 17 grandchildren. That's the plan. Who goes, you know what? I did really cool things. I don't want to be the old granny that gave up because the podcast editing was too hard, or gave up because we ended up in Whitney and it was too difficult. I don't want to have regrets for not doing stuff. I want
And you
to
mentioned
have
about
good stories.
outsourcing. If people are struggling, as well
Yeah.
as obviously joining gorgeous Milspo and finding their tribe and their people and their community that lift them up and carry them, what advice would you give people to help them get through the dark days, to help them push through that really scary, shit scary moment? Because often it's the shit scary moment that people stop, but that's just the moment they need to keep going and succeed.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give them in order to make all of that happen?
Just do one thing, just one tiny step. It's the concept about running a marathon. You don't go, right, I'm going to run a marathon in September, and then you go and run 26 miles, 26 point whatever it is miles. You go, I'm going to buy some running shoes. So the first step is you decided you're buying some running shoes, and the next step is you go on the internet and find some running shoes. You don't just head out and do it.
Unless
Just
you're me. Sorry
unless
to a Royal Marine who has
unless you,
definitely ran a marathon with no training.
they're a strange bunch. But it's just that one step because that kicks off the next step and the next step and the next step. And that's manageable. Looking for trainers on the internet, anybody can do that. Running a marathon, only special people can do that, but they had to find the trainers first.
Yeah.
And that is the key to it, just taking that first step. And you know what? If you end up not buying the trainers and it's 6 months and you then have to go back online to buy the trainers, that's okay too. Just becoming comfortable in that step. I had the most amazing, I was at a conference and Jodie Goldman, I think her name was, said, we don't do stuff because we need to wait until we're ready. So I'm not going to do this because I've not learned this, or I'm not going to um, buy this thing or this course or do this course because I'm not educated enough in this thing. And the phrase, she'd said it a lot better than that, but the phrase was that I'm going to learn to, hang on, I'm going to edit this bit and do it properly. I'm going to have to think about it. What was it? Oh yeah. So her phrase was, I won't be getting in the pool until I've learned how to swim, which I
Yeah,
think is fascinating because you can't swim without trying. You know, like you're never going to learn to swim unless you jump in that pool.
yeah,
And yes, these things are overwhelming and hard and tough, and military life is crazy when you add that to it. Um, but just, email somebody and go, I'm doing a podcast. I've never done one before. Fancy being on it. And before you know it, you end up talking to Emma on your podcast that's listened to like two by 20,000 people, which is crazy and scary. But yeah, it's that long road of overnight success, isn't it?
yeah.
That's what it is. Just take that first step.
Oh, Jess, I so love chatting to you. I'm really mindful of time. I've got, I think, about two more questions for you. So, um, I think this one's really controversial. Anyway, what would you say to the MOD if you could get them in the room, Jess?
So I've added this question to this podcast series because previously everybody said the guests you need are the MOD. Um, and I've added this and I thought, no, I've got to own this. I've got to add this to this episode as well. But the reality is I spend some time with the MOD, whether that's through what I do or what my husband does, because I like to take up every opportunity to ruin his career as well as mine. No, I don't ruin his career, but I do end up speaking to a lot of MOD people who they get it, but the actions are not happening. So I would say to them, hi, you do all these surveys, you get the feedback. It is so influential on your operational efficiency, the happiness of military families. Please see that link because we all see it. We all know that if you're going to spend millions of pounds training, so my husband's a pilot, it's cost the country millions of pounds to train him to fly whatever aircraft he flies. If I tell him to leave or to pick me or his job, no matter which one he picks, he's going to be unhappy and not do his job as efficiently. Or you will lose him as an employee. So just make my life a little bit happier, make sure that my oven works and the grass is cut and the fence isn't falling down and that my business can thrive and that you support amazing projects like Milspo or Forces Wives Challenge or all of them, all of the many things, because that's going to solve your attainment problem and your recruitment problem. And also, if I'm distracted by how wonderful my business is, I'm not going to notice as much that the house is falling down and that we have to move and that my children have to keep changing schools. So it's a no-brainer to me. Just listen to the stats and listen to what the humans are saying and then actually do something about it. Because in my view, it's a quick fix and it's an easy fix. But they're not quite there yet.
What would be the quick fix?
To support the projects that are good, that are working, that have the audience. So like Milspo has got 1,400 people in the Facebook group and we're all doing epic things, but the project that supports it is Milspo and it doesn't get the recognition or the funding. And there's some really cool things, like I said, Forces Wives Challenge, that take, like lovely Jill was out sailing. So Jill's in a wheelchair, but she was out sailing on the Solent. That's so cool. And it's not about her sailing, it's about her meeting people that like to get out and it's that community that makes going home to the miserable Mary Quarter or going home and not seeing your partner because they're weekending that little bit easier because you've got other stuff. So the projects that actually help those on the ground, as opposed to we've created this amazing platform, but nobody wants to use it, or we've created this amazing course, but nobody wants to use it. The support that's created is not, it's either not filtering through to those on the ground or it's not suitable for those. It's not suitable for the end user.
Yeah, do you know what really comes to my mind when you say this is I'm a big one for connection, whether that's online connection or whether that's face-to-face connection, because I think there is something about connecting with people who get it and doing things that make our hearts sing, that, like you say, make a shitty time a lot easier. And I mean, I can say that having had my husband die slowly over 2.5 years. And the happiest moments I've had over the 8 years of widowhood have been connection with Milspos, reconnecting with the military. And I so agree with you. It's all jolly fine to do the surveys. And I think the military is actually really good at doing the surveys. You know, from my perspective, there's been one on military widows and bereavement, but then there's no action, there's nothing behind it. And like you say, being able to support the things that actually then enable that connection and enable those things that are going to make people's hearts sing, whether that's coming along to co-working, networking, whatever it is, whether it is go sailing on the Solent or climbing a mountain or whatever. But it's those things, because I mean, the guys know this and the girls who serve. It's those moments when, and I mean, I can talk because I was in the TA for a bit, it's those moments you're cold and wet and miserable, but you support each other and you're there for each other. And those connections, they are gold dust, you know, they can get you through really hard times. I love that. I really, really love that.
Yeah.
Really, really love that. Gosh, we're nearly at our time now. So I guess the last bit is, how can people find Jess? Well, let's do it, split it in two. How can people find Milspo, and how can people find Jess and Design Jessica?
Well, Milspo is the website, milspo.co.uk, which is Milspo, spouses, partners, other halves.co.uk. And from there you can find everything, but this podcast is obviously the best place to start. And come and join the Facebook group, come and join the LinkedIn group, come and join the events. They're really good fun. And my design business is called Design Jessica because, well, I mean, you can probably work out why. And that's designjessica.co.uk. And I specialize in branding, especially for small businesses and especially for Milspos. But I think that's accidental because those are the circles I work in. But yes, come and join Milspo because it's just fun. And you have to be brave. Everybody's they always say, "Oh, I didn't join for like 6 months because you all looked so professional, like you had your head screwed on properly." And then I joined you and I realized you're just like me and it's just absolute chaos. So don't be frightened. If you can walk into a coffee morning with a load of military wives, then you can definitely come to Milspo because it's a lot friendlier. So don't get tripped up by worrying about what we think of you. We have no opinions about you. We just can't wait to meet you.
And it doesn't matter what stage of business people are at, does it,
No.
either?
Any stage, any rank that your partner is, any marriage criteria. You don't have to have so many children. You don't have to live anywhere. There's even a few veteran spouses that are snuck in. We've got widows like you. If you have been affected, it sounds like a charity thing for comic relief. No, but if you have been affected by military life and you want to support network and you have an idea for a business or you have an established business, why not join us? We're good fun.
Yes, it has literally been, I feel like at times it's got a bit emotional, but it has literally been an honour and a privilege to be the person who's allowed to interview you and show the world that you are a real person. And like, from a Milspo person who, like, literally, I joke, but it's not a joking matter at all, that I had a like mini existential crisis in lockdown, having given up life as, ironically, a wills and probate lawyer to spend time with my children, and then 2 weeks later to be plunged into lockdown and spend all my time with my children, and discover that we're quite neurodivergent and there's a lot of issues going on and all the rest of it. Finding Milspo was literally a lifeline. It's no exaggeration. And if people need that connection or want that connection, I would just so strongly recommend that they reach out. And from the community, I would just like to say the most enormous thank you for everything you do. I've seen it when it gets hard. I've seen it when it gets tough. I know how much blood, sweat, tears, and time and voluntary as well that you've put into this. And I really hope that people listening to this, a magic wand will come down and decide that this is one of the connecting things that military spouses, partners and other halves need more of in their life, and that you get a bit more support for it, because we all support you because we know the life-changing difference it has. But I think Milspo needs more support from outside, as well as from inside. So if you're listening to this, please share it, spread it round, get lots of people to listen to it, and tell them that Crazy Emma interviewed gorgeous Jess. And yeah, I think that's pretty much us, really. Anything else you want to add,
No,
Alana?
Emma, just thank you so much for doing this, because I know it's a little bit out of your comfort zone. I was so nervous. But it's nice to be able to just tell people what I do without sounding like it's pre-rehearsed, and it was a good, genuine conversation. And I'm so chuffed that I got to do it with you.
Yeah, no rehearsal needed.
No rehearsal needed.
Hence the giggles and the moments. But you know, it's all good. It's all authentic. It's all very us.
Thanks, Emma.
It's my absolute pleasure. Take care of yourself, lovely.